Hello, role-playing people, and in this episode of the podcast, we'll be talking about more Vampire the Masquerade, and how becoming a vampire effectively forces you into a life of crime, no matter how lawful and good a mortal you were before the embrace. Do keep in mind I'm considering this predominantly from the Camarilla perspective, since they are supposed to be the most humane of vampires, but the Canaanites' reliance on crime is much more visible and less discreet in the other sects. Let's go. As surprising as it might seem, I think it has less to do with having a ravenous beast inside of you and everything to do with the simple consequences of not being able to exist legally. So, your life was extinguished in a mixture of pleasure and agony, and you awaken to the fact that you are clinically dead and cannot reveal your existence to anyone you've ever known, lest you endanger the masquerade. For that same reason, you cannot reveal your current nature to anyone, any mortal. Your sire will probably keep you close and monitor you as you deal with the trauma of the embrace and come to accept what has just been done to you. What that means is you don't get to go home. You don't get to go to work, and unless your sire is wise enough to carefully orchestrate and justify your withdrawal from society, something they might need assistance with from their kindred peers, you will become a missing persons case, especially if you were cared for and well connected as a mortal. Your family, your friends, your employer, they will all start looking for you eventually, and you cannot tell them anything about what happened to you lest you endanger the masquerade and your sire's reputation. But as mortals often do, they will involve the police. You know that's what they'll do. So now a whole organization dedicated to law and order and fighting crime is looking for you. They can track your phone, credit card activity, they are probably keeping an eye on your home, and so on. So you cannot use any of your mortal resources anymore. Your phone has been thrown away along with your credit card and all that credit, unless your wise and careful sire withdrew all of your resources and maybe liquidated your assets for cash. Cash changes hands quicker than banking transfers. But even so, even if everyone believes you chose to vanish and never be found, your sire is a criminal. Not only did they murder you from the clinical point of view and brought you into a miserable existence of servitude, but they effectively liquidated all of your assets without your permission. Most of the times, unless you were a ghoul already, unless you knew your sire and knew what you were getting into, none of this is done with your permission. Even if they pulled some strings with a prince who is most likely to have contacts among the police and make it that your case isn't looked into much, you still need to lay low after the embrace. Indeed, the prince himself is a criminal. He is corrupting the police force of the city. He is throwing his influence around. In laying low, you still renounce a huge part of your mortal assets. Or maybe you sign a few papers and all of your belongings are now in possession of one of your sire's ghouls. But this is still very much illegal by mortal standards. The fact that you are forced into secrecy is a violation of your civil rights. You cannot speak freely anymore. The fact that you have to take blood from living, breathing people without their permission or knowledge is also criminal. If your sire is connected enough to give you a new ID as per alternate identity background, a new name, or if you decide to impersonate someone using your vampiric disciplines, that is also criminal. It is identity theft. You cannot legally work anymore. You cannot legally own things anymore. You cannot legally earn resources, and you cannot appeal to or assist the law in any way. You're witness to a horrendous crime? Well, guess what? If you're thinking you can make it to court and testify against anyone at 2 in the afternoon, you're dead wrong, pun intended. You can't even be awake during the day, let alone walk into a court of law. If you are stopped in the late hours of the night for a busted tail light, and you don't have a driver's license or some form of ID, that's a crime. And it's serious trouble for yourself, your sire, and the masquerade, unless you cover it up really quickly probably using your supernatural gifts. So you are now outside mortal law. You cannot care for it, even should you want to. And it, the law, will not protect you anymore. To say that being a vampire is similar to joining the mafia or any other organized crime group is not wrong at all. That's pretty much how it works, and since none of your possessions can be justified legally, you'll need someone to hold and tend to your resources for you. Someone like a ghoul. But you see, in making a ghoul, you're effectively creating a blood-bound servant who has no choice but to care for you, to love you, and tend to your every whim. That is a silently, societally accepted form of slavery, right there in the world of vampires, as is the embrace. That is, again, criminal, but highly necessary if you want to have any semblance of safety and control in your life. Unlike you, the mortal retainer can exist legally. They can own things like your haven, like your car, and they can keep up a front for your existence that cannot be justified or even known to most people. You cannot and should not withdraw money from the bank, but your retainer can do that for you. They can pay any necessary bills, they can go out and get clothes for you, their beloved domitor, even as their family begs them to stay home to get out of whatever deal they have going on, but they can't, because the call of the vitae is too strong. And we all know if the family starts looking into this little deal, they either join the Society of the Undead as your servants, or they are a liability and must be silenced one way or another. But say you are so humane and lawful that you systematically refuse to have retainers. What happens then? Well, you cannot safely control or own anything. So then your sire probably still has to take care of you like the vulnerable babe of a fledgling you are. So they will not dare release you and make you a neonate. If you are useless to them, if you are too much of a burden, they will probably dispose of you silently, since they are completely entitled to do so by kindred tradition, by kindred law. If you somehow do become a neonate against all odds, and you control no assets, you will probably be extremely vulnerable to anyone who wishes you harm. You're the laughing stock of the city. No kindred in their right mind would award titles such as Keeper of Elysium, Chancellor, or Sheriff to a vampire who can't even manage their own resources, their own haven, let alone the communal resources of the city or the resources of the prince's office. The law of the kindred itself is criminal in the sense that secrecy is valued above all other virtues like justice or compassion. Kindred rarely care for genuine justice in the human sense of the word, when all of their dealings, all of their backgrounds and assets are obtained and held through criminal behavior. What kindred want most of all is discretion, control, order, if you will. All of their backgrounds are fortifications against chaos, against incoming attacks. They are battle lines. To have no such defenses is to leave yourself extremely vulnerable, and such vulnerability in the Camarilla is worse than death. Human morality and human needs are thorns in the side of kindred morality, needs, and traditions. The survival of vampires, especially fledglings, depends on their ability to adapt to a life of crime, or should I say, unlife of crime. Unlife which carries on because of corruption, manipulation, slavery, secrecy, physical aggression, extortion, murder. What is the value of truth when all you do is lie to keep your existence hidden? Adding insult to injury, not only is their society criminal by the standards of current mortal law, but kindred have a hungry, raging beast inside of them, silently pulling at their strings more or less constantly, and there is no way that's going to help any of them or their disposition. See, this is why vampires make their moves ever so slightly, very, very carefully, because they They are a secret criminal organization. A botched feeding, unless covered up at the right time, can have disastrous consequences for everyone further down the line. Keeping everyone's secrets secret is a top priority, not maintaining your own humanity and self-imposed moral standards. Those are entirely your concern. But make no mistake, walking unseen into someone's house is trespassing and a violation of their privacy, as is telepathy or using dominate to read and alter someone's memories. Commanding someone into doing your bidding either through verbal manipulation or emotional manipulation is forcing them into a form of slavery. Jump feeding on someone on the street is assault. I'm not saying Kindred can't use their resources to support certain things they find beautiful and of value, like art, justice, maybe some even support charities. I'm thinking of a canonical character, actually, who cares deeply about the law and educates all of his pupils, shall we say, in that spirit, in the spirit of the law. I'm not saying Domitors can't treat their retainers very well, maybe even genuinely care for those retainers, and I'm not saying they can't take pity on a ghoul's addiction to vitae. Benevolent Domitors are certainly a thing. But that doesn't change the fact that underneath all of the covers, at the heart of the empire of deception they've built to keep themselves hidden and safe, vampires are criminals with bigger or smaller lists of crimes. Their existence will always hurt humanity more than it does good. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play safe.